It's also creates the narrative and indication that success is not contingent on what someone right?
There's no thing now, it's just okay, welcome to round one of this year's ASDC. I'm Paolo, your chair, our dashboard to your right, speaker. So, on the grade will be moving slide on the right hand, and you put some issues in. DHS2. Right? The DHS2. But the motion this house reflects the narrative and success of people and then achieve it from all factors of the game.
Smart, athletic, confident. These are all terms we use in society now to embrace the idea that everyone is already different from each other. So now why does the education system, the one responsible for catering ideas and forming ideas in society's mind, preach the completely opposite idea of telling us that everyone should be the same? Because that's necessarily what is happening in society nowadays. Couple of things we have to paint to you first, right? If I graduated from the London School of Economics, what I expect from when I come out is that I'm going to be chased by these job opportunities that beg for me, literally beg for me to take them in, to actually be part of their setup, their corporate setup, right? Reality check, I'm actually going to come out of LSE and actually still go job hunting and find out two scenarios. One, that I can't even find a job or get an opportunity for a job opportunity. But secondly, the most normal scenario that's going to happen is I'm going to go for the job interview and fall flat on my face because I'm not used to the idea of speaking in front of lots of different people. So what is the necessary problem that really rises from here? The school education system lies to you. It says that all your life success is going to be contingent whether or not you score straight A's. So when I'm lied to and told that I'm going to be successful in life if I get straight A's, now once I graduate from LSE, I'm going to expect that, but that's not what's going to happen. So we feel there's a very detrimental harm coming from the idea of the school preaching the wrong idea and telling you lies, feeding you false information at such a shallow age. That's the problem we have in society nowadays. I got to one main thing to talk to you about today, which is basically the education system as a whole and how it harms the idea of subjectivity. Two prongs to this idea, which is basically how we cannot really determine success as a whole, and it should never be done, and also how the education system does not cater to all of us individually. Before that, do I have any questions? No. All right. Moving on to the first idea, right, of how the education necessarily needs to be able to cater to subjectivity. If we're all going to be the same, we might as well not try to embrace the idea that we're all not the same, right? We need to be able to embrace the idea first of all. Once we embrace the idea, only then we can gain the potential benefits from being actually subjective, right? Now the problem we have in defining success as a whole. Why we shouldn't define success? The question in itself answers itself. Because it harms subjectivity. Why is subjectivity so important? Because if I were a kid and I were the kid of, say, a businessman who never really finished his education, even though I live a fantastic life and I'm happy with it, and even though my father or my mother are both fantastic human beings and they both enjoy their life, now I question whether or not they really are happy, or question the logic on why they are happy since they haven't got a high school diploma. Now, why this is detrimental to a family, institution, and a child as a whole is because they need to understand that subjectivity is there. They need to know from a young age that people are going to be different regardless, and that you cannot determine success. That's the most important idea we try to propagate. You cannot determine success because it is subjective. Given that's already a fact, we feel that this idea of schools preaching this idea that it is no more subjective is false, and we need to eradicate this problem as a whole, right? So telling them, what we're necessarily doing to the children now is we're telling them that you shouldn't really be happy, nor should your parents be happy, that because they don't have a high school diploma, even though they are apparently happy. Now that's going to have a problem in the subconscious of the child and give him depression later on, which is a very big chance of happening, right? Now, moving on to my second prong, which is basically whether or not the education system caters to everyone or not. Now, this debate doesn't occur to all the people who are fine with only studying for the rest of their life. That's fine. We're okay with that. Also, we don't feel now changing the idea and that we're propagating is going to necessarily affect these people, because as a whole, these families are actually going to say that, fine, we think that your education needs to be bumped up. We feel that the parents serve as a necessary check and balance to these children. If the parents feel that these children aren't good enough to do sports, they're necessarily going to be pushing them towards education. So that's not going to be a problem in this debate. This debate necessarily happens where sportsmen, jocks, the term in itself can be very closely linked to jocks having no brains. But that's the thing that we need to eradicate in society, because we feel that there are people out there with dreams of wanting to pursue their favorite sport, playing until they can't play anymore, and retiring with a pension and the pride that they played for their country. We feel that this idea, this spirit needs to be blocked. Cocooned. We need to be able to protect the spirit of the people, because we as a responsible government need to be able to preach the idea of subjectivity, need to commit to the idea that people are going to be different, because not everybody's going to function the same way. So this is necessarily where the debate should occur, and this is where the education system does not cater to everyone. On how, if I were to pursue a sports program and say I'm not the most inclined academically, I should be able to be okay, completely okay with the idea of pursuing my sports program, right? But rather, now what's going to happen is I'm going to be ostracized by not only the school, but by my peers. Because now I'm being told that I'm worthless because I am not as good as the rest in my academics. Now, the problem that really raises in society is the idea of segregation, where smart, not smart are completely two different ideas. We don't feel that this determines your success, number one, or number two, it doesn't determine your social status either. It necessarily only determines whether you're doing what you want to do or not. That's what we feel needs to come out of the school education system. People pursuing what they want to do. That's what we're going to achieve under our side. The harm that is going to occur if you do not cater to everyone is you're going to stunt the potential creativity arising from all these people. You're necessarily saying that you're useless, you're not. That's a problem in saying that this part of society is better than the rest. We have a problem with that, and we fight for the opposite. So what have I told you today? I've talked to you about how you cannot determine success, and you cannot, and the education system currently does not cater to everyone as a whole. We need to change that idea, and we dearly regret the idea that success is only contingent upon your academic results.
Thank you, Prime Minister. All of you folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are debating on the motion, this shall regress the narrative in education that success in life contingent on one's level of academic achievement. So before moving on, I would like to say my rebuttals, and today I have 3 rebuttals to present to you. And the first one is about what the government have said that the school education system lies about the success. But as we see that our side strongly believe that the basic success is to qualify and have a job. And to do that, you need education. And when you have the job, you can do whatever you want. When you have money, you pay for what you want. And that is what we call success. After that, you can have happiness. But we need education, and education is very important. And I'm going to clarify that more in my argument. So moving on to my second rebuttal about the determining success is in different way. Some people may determine success as happiness, some may determine as work. But as we see that, as I have already stated in my first rebuttal about the basic success, if we really determine success as happiness of our family, then you need to qualify in your education. If you want your family to be happy, you qualify in education. Every company wants you to work with them. You got the money from working, and then you make your family happy, and that is what success very mean. And moving on to my third rebuttal about the example of the sport. We want to protect the right to play sport, and your successfulness consists on playing sport and what you want to do. So the government wants to let them do that. But if you want to do what you want in the future, you have to have the money and you have to have education first. So I would like to set my example too about playing sport. If you are very specialized in playing sport and when you grow up you don't have education and then someone cheats on you. Someone cheats when they pay money to you when you after you finish playing sport and they cheat on your money and you don't know anything about it. We have example of Phum Phuong, the singer in Thailand. She is very specialized in singing and after that someone cheated her on the money and now she have no money left. She is bankrupt and now she is sad because she have the cancer, she is sick and she doesn't know about it because she has no education and she can't even read the book. So moving on to our culture model. Our culture model is we are not rejecting the narrative in education. These narratives are beneficial, they are good, they promote the student to study harder. So the point of narrative is like a campaign to drive the student to studies. And there is no point of regretting it because I will see that the education is always beneficial. And if God really regrets the narrative in education of successfulness, they are not promoting the education, which they fail to fulfill the role of government in promoting the education. And moving on to my first argument about the narrative about education is important or the academic is important. So from government, as far as I know, they are not promoting the education for sure. And they think that the level of academic achievement doesn't matter anything. So I would like to say the education benefits. So firstly, at the individual level, about the education and work. Education is a guarantee that you will be productive citizen and that gives a chance to you to step forward and the companies will value you. They will give you the credit more. If you have no education and you are artist, you practice painting every day like the government are going to promote. You practice painting every day, you are very specialized, but the company are not going to take you in because they don't know that you qualify enough to work. They don't give you credit of that, and what the credit comes from the education. So that is the basic qualification that you need. It's a justification that the company will know that you are qualified enough to work. This is what makes society easier. So for the example about the baker called Lai Dongjin in China, his dad always tell him that you need to learn. It's like the narrative of education. You need to learn, and when you grow up, you can have good work. You can help us, and that's what successfulness. And Lai Dongjin believe him. He think that he want to make his family happier. He want to be richer, and he want to end the cycle of poverty. And education can end the cycle of poverty, which my second speaker will clarify in that. So moving on to my last stop, which is about Lai Dongjin. And he believed his father. He continued studying harder and harder, and now he owns a very big companies in China. No, sir. And now he's rich, he's happy, he got the money, and that is what he values successfulness as. It's the happy of his family. So as we see that the school are not giving the wrong belief of successfulness, that's just giving you the idea of how you are going to obtain that successfulness in the future. So moving on to the second level, which is society. No, sir. The society, the narrative will encourage a student to study. And when they get higher profit, this will end the harmful cycle of poverty in the society. Because right now, some students believe that they can do whatever they want if they want to specialize in some subjects. But then they don't study, they're passive doing the things they want to do every day. And after that, they're not getting higher because they don't have the credit of education. The education is the proof that you have capacity to work together with the companies. And the study a lot will make less mistake in working in the future. So what I have proved to you today, I have proved that the harm of school lying does not exist. Because what schools are trying to promote is they are not lying that successfulness is just to get a job. They are promoting that the idea to obtain your successfulness is to study hard right now, to work hard, to study every day, so that you can obtain the successfulness that you value in the future. And that is why the the government failed to give us the real harm, and they failed to realize that education is important in the basic level of children's life. And that's why I'm very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Maybe your proposition, I would like to encourage each to give it a step of information, not what they
The education system tells you that you're going to be successful if you make that system yours. If you learn and you develop and you grow as an individual following this education system that you've been taught from young, you're going to be a successful individual, and that's a guarantee. We think that that's a lie that's being propagated by education systems and by society. That regardless of who you are, if you stick to this education system where we set for you that the state determines is your precursor to a success, you're going to be a successful individual. We don't think that that's the case in society, because now there's a narrative in education, a narrative that says that only if you follow the system that you're going to be successful. We deeply regret it because we think that you as an individual cannot define success as education alone. We deeply regret it because society has come to this level. Okay, one argument from me today, which is simply about how the interaction between society changes when you make education a precursor to a success, and the many harms that come from that. But before that, look at a few of the ideas the opposition tried to bring to us in today's debate. They came up here and told us that you define success by getting a job and financial stability and whatnot. We concede to that idea. You need to have a certain level of financial stability. You need to have a job, but at the end of the day, is education 100% going to get you to that level? Look, we didn't come up here and tell you that education is useless, but we came up here and told you that you cannot solely put this idea of education as your marker to a success. We think individuals can be successful without education, as Karthik's proven. We've talked to you that success itself cannot be predetermined by a single linear system that only caters to a certain individuals, because we have to understand individuals are different. Different people cope with this idea of learning and developing themselves differently. You cannot judge the most pragmatic individual in society as the type of person that you want to use so that other people will develop. We think that that doesn't make sense. But secondly, let's put this idea of how the narrative is important, because when you have education in your life, you're going to get a job. This job you can get this job because of the credibility they're going to get from education. Look, at the end of the day, regardless of this credibility, education doesn't teach you the values that you need to actually succeed in the future, because you as an individual need to know more things than what you learn in geography and history. We think, yes, that is important at the time, but to develop as an individual, you need to extend yourself further than the education system can provide you. We think what happens is, you start the development of certain types of individuals because the system doesn't cater to everyone. Karthik, my Prime Minister's really come up here and talk to you of how the system caters towards a single linear type of individuals. We think it's detrimental when you want to propagate that this type of system that only caters towards a certain group of individuals is the marker to a success. At the end of the day, there are other types of individuals. What do you say about these individuals? Something I'm going to go on in my topic. But before that, a little clarification. We don't regret education system. We just regret the over-dependency that exists in life regarding success towards education. We're completely fine with individuals learning. We're completely fine with the system. But what we're not fine with is that within the system, there's this idea. This idea that you're not a successful individual if you do not follow the system to a certain accord, right? But let's go into the idea I'm going to try to bring to you today about changing society's interaction, why that's detrimental. Before that, yes.
This narrative promotes learning and to be studying or not define the as a job.
It may have started out like that, but now it's become a societal pressure that exists. That means you are defined as a successful individual based on the diploma that you got. You're defined as a successful individual with the number of A stars that you have on your certificate. It's no more become a sort of motivating factor for you to become a smarter individual, but it's become a pressure. It's It's become the same way Indian parents come and tell you, if you don't give me an A in your exam, I'm going to beat you. It's become that level of intensified pressure. We regret that, right? But let's get this idea about changing the interaction society. Because what happens when you tell somebody with a degree that they're smart? That they're the most successful individual in society, and that they're the perfect form of they're the perfect branch of society that exists. That means when you tell that a smart person that, you tell a person that without the degree, without the diploma, without the A stars that you need, you are stupid. You are not the level of society that state deems you should be. You fall below par in society. Why is it detrimental? Because at the end of the day, that we think ruins the credibility of the people who don't get degrees. Because we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, every individual has a value towards society. States have a role to recognize that these individuals can contribute towards society. We think what's detrimental is that when you tell people who don't have a degree that you are not successful, that means you tell that person that you're not successful simply because you don't have an education system is completely nonsensical. Because you can still contribute back to a society. Individuals have a value. We think states need to actually recognize the value. But on a second level and a more deep level, because we have to understand education systems cannot be reached by everyone. This argument is going to go into a new simple direction between the rich and a poor person. Because we think that a more average class individual and a more of a higher class individual can afford education systems easily. That means you're telling these people that they're successful. That means a rich person or an average finance person is going to be successful. That means they are the contributors to a society and they make humanity progress. You're going to tell the poor people they're a burden to success and that they don't deserve this recognition that they have a value in society. We think that that's the problem that exists because it's come to the point where society takes education system into more of a pressure. It's no more become a push that opposition trying to push us to raise debate, but it's become this sort of pressure that forces parents to threaten their children. It's become a pressure that now we think is going to exceed the boundaries that exist. Now, you're going to tell a poor person that they can't contribute to society. You're going to tell somebody, just because you can't afford it, because you can't afford education, you're now unsuccessful. You now don't you now don't contribute back to society. We think that's detrimental because poor people, regardless, still can't contribute. They're individuals, they have value. We think individuals need to, we think the state and society needs to understand this. So what have we told you today? Why this take the debate? We've talked to you about the harms of the education system itself. We deeply regret this idea that your education is your marker to a success. We're fine with the education system itself, but what we're not fine is with this added pressure that ruins the whole system itself. You take away the productivity when you put in pressure and fear. We think that's not what you learn. I've talked to you about how you change the interaction with society because when you tell a smart person that they're successful and a poor person that they're not successful based on the diploma that they have or they don't have, we think that affects society. I've also brought this idea about how the rich and poor people and the interaction that exists within the education system. We take the debate because we understand your success in life as a speaker is not determined by the diploma you have, but it's about the contribution that you can bring to society. We greatly propose that.
We believe that education is the most important main factor that makes us stand here. And you and us is come here because we have education. Why our parents send us to school if they think that the education doesn't cost everything? Everyone in this world needs the education for the basement of a life success. The foundation of the education can abstract and spread in different branches and make people still alive now. Even if you see a lot of people that success with the contingent, but they still have the education for improving their knowledge. Is contingent mean can happen or not? Which if you didn't take the education, you may success or not. I will focus on the not success people. If they didn't have the education, they didn't have any main relying place. It's like you taking a big risk. If you don't have the education, you fall. It's like you fall off the mountain without the rope, and you didn't know when you will fall. Even if the success people have still no success with the contingent, but they still have their knowledge, because everything is start from the education. For example, like a Steve Jobs, if they didn't learn about the technology, he can make an iPhone and give to use us now. So we believe that the education can improve and abstract and apply to our success. My first rebuttal is learn from the reality of potential activities. And then the affirmative side come up and say that a potential activity can make them success. I think it can help, but it's not all. Like the school and everything in life now needs education and activities. You need to use two things and become like a normal people. And then it will make a people success, because you need to know everything, not like a just activity or you just play sport and that means success. For example, when you go to the university and for example, like you send an application to them and you just have just an activity like a sport, does that mean you can go to the university? No, you can't. You need to, like smart in everything. My second rebuttal is a role of a school, which a role of school is to improve I think the role of school is need to improve the academic. That is, I come up and say that school is teach a full lesson and give a role education to the students, which is the role of school is need to improve their academic. And just the way to solve a problem is just not like take the education away from the student. You need to apply them and improve them, not ban them. And you come up and say that about the individual difference, which is, I think that's true that everyone have the individual difference, but it's a role of the teacher to take care of the children and help a student to improve and develop. And that will make them have a different style, and they can go to find a job because they have a signature and have their own way. Even if the people have the individual difference, but it doesn't mean the individual difference can make them success. So we believe that the education is the base of the knowledge and can improve them and make them success in their life. And I think that's my fourth rebuttal is a narrative is important. That you come up and say that narratives have a harm and have a problem, it can pressure them. But I think that narrative is like a turn into the pressure, but it's like a good pressure that can force them to make and have an inspiration. And my fifth rebuttal is you say that a narrative is become a pressure, but I think that the narrative is the way to follow. Like for example, I see the Steve Jobs, and I learned a biography from the Steve Jobs, and I think it's like an advice. What I need to do, what should I go, and what should I do? Not just pressure me that I need to be like a Steve Jobs, and if I can do, I will suicide. It's not like that. It's the way to force them to the success. When you see the people who have a success, you need to follow them, and it's our inspiration. And my last rebuttal is we are not defining the success as a job. The success doesn't mean that you have a job, but it's like how you're happy with your life, how is you can happy with something that you have, Just enough that. And I think that a job is a part of the little things that can make us happy. And if you say that you didn't use you didn't use education, and but I think that's wrong, because the education is the base of everything that can make us success, because we have something that for relying. For my argument about the cycle of poverty, that which is mean the people who have a less in a level of academic, they can find a job and then losing the money, and then no family. Yeah. And in the actor of this debate is that education is a major key of the success. A social needs education because to make everyone have equality. In the economic, it can improve a lot of a lot of cycle of poverty can lead to the low GDP of the country. There's no country, and then is no country in the world will invest in our country. For example, like Africa, that they have a low in GDP. They become like, because a lot of people in that country didn't have an education. So, as I said, and my first speaker talked about, we didn't find a job as a success. We believe that education is the main thing that can make us success. Thank you.
Thank you.
Side opposition has come up to you and talked today about how success isn't necessarily defined as getting a job at the end of the day. But when the first speaker came up, she clearly said that in order to be successful, you have to get a job. You have to be able to provide for your family. And when you are able to provide for your family, that's when you truly achieve success as a whole in your life. Therefore, the second speaker coming up and saying that, oh, now we don't define success as getting a job in the end is invalid, and therefore that point does not stand at the end of the day. What have I got to give you in my speech today? I have two flash points for you today. Firstly, I will be talking about how does education at the end of the day really determine success in a person in his life. And secondly, about what are the harms that exist in the current education system and how this affects the students and society as a whole. Starting with my first touchpoint, which is, does education really determine success? Side opposition has come up today and talked about, in order to get a job, in order to be successful in life, you have to have a good education. You have to be educated. You have to be able to get these A's and A pluses in your education to be able to get a job. But what side opposition has failed to understand is that when you necessarily score these A's in your education and you go for these job interviews as a whole, that isn't the only thing that these job interviewers are going to be looking at. You can, okay, yes, they will be maybe impressed by the number of A's that you have achieved in this education, but when you go out there and you are unable to fully socialize and be able to speak properly, then maybe you won't be able to get the job. This is what side government is trying to stand for today, that success in your education, getting the A pluses and getting good results in your education is not going to determine the job that you are at the end of the day trying to achieve. Now, why is this? When you go for a job interview, yes, they are going to look at your resume and look at your A pluses and things like that, but they are going to be asking you questions. They are going to be interviewing you. That's why the word is called interview. They are going to be talking to you and socializing with you. But if you are unable to do that, at the end of the day, you won't be able to get that job. Therefore, we on side government understand that when you achieve academics as a whole, it doesn't mean that you are going to be successful in life, because there are many other aspects in your success as a human being to achieve your goal at the end of the day, which is to get a job and therefore be able to provide for your family or provide for yourself at the end of the day. Secondly, moving into my second touchpoint, which is what are the harms that exist in the current education system. The education system as a whole aims for the students to achieve A+ in their life. The education system says and completely tells the students that once you achieve this success in your education, you are going to have an easy life. This is what we regret on side government. This is not the case, because in society currently, just because you graduated from a high school with high grades, it doesn't mean that people from companies are going to come and ask for you and specifically want you for that job. This isn't happening in current status quo, because academics isn't the main aspect of which these job interviewers are looking at, which is the fault of side government, and which is why we regret it at the end of the day. Now, another thing is the subjectivity in society, which my second speaker came up and talked about how the difference between the rich and poor. So basically, the rich people are able to afford these educations. They are able to afford going to these schools, able to afford getting tuition and therefore being successful in their education. Therefore, these people are generally categorized as successful people. But at the end of the day, when you look at the poor people who aren't necessarily able to afford this education, and at the end of the day aren't able to go to these successful colleges. So basically, side opposition is coming up and saying, because you don't have an education, you are not useful to the society. You are not able to contribute to the society. Therefore, at the end of the day, because you don't have an education, you are not useful. Now, how is this a harm towards society as a whole? When you segregate these two groups as a whole, it's not the choices of these rich and poor people. They are incapable sometimes of getting this education as a whole. That's why we don't believe that academics is the main category and characterization that you should look at as a success in life. We believe that maybe if these people are incapable of achieving these academic successes, they should be able to, like my first speaker said, be able to pursue the other things such as sports. Like if they are interested in sports, they should be able to go and pursue this. And the perception of society, which basically states that if you are uneducated, you are not perfect, you are not smart, therefore you, at the end of the day, you can't succeed in life. We on side government strongly disagree with this, because we believe that just because you have a successful academic education, it does not guarantee your success in the future. It does not guarantee you getting that job when you sit for that interview. Therefore, what have we on side government brought to you today? We have talked about how, at the end of the day, education as a whole doesn't necessarily guarantee your success in life. Therefore, we don't agree that we should dismiss education as a whole. We agree with education. We agree that it can help you in a certain way, but at the end of the day, it is not the main general characterization or aspect that will help you in getting a successful future at the end of the day. And secondly, we talked about how the current education system as a whole harms society and creates segregation between the people who are incapable of achieving these academic achievements as a whole. Therefore, we on side government take the debate. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our stand, we believe that the successful in life need a common knowledge on academic knowledge. Today, I'm going to present you two clash points, which is the first one, how can you success in life? And the second clash point is about the individual knowledge or academic knowledge. Moving on to my first clash point, which is how can you be successful in life? They said that if you get an academic knowledge, doesn't mean that you're going to get a job. But we see that the motion stand for itself that at least you have to have one level of academic knowledge. We see that if they come up with an argument about the poor people can't get an education, we see that in this point it's a job of the government to provide an education for poor people. We see that by the reason that poor people still exist is that they don't know that the education is important. We see that at least if you can have a one level of academic knowledge, you can still have a chance to success in life. We see that you can find the poor people and ask them, did you have studied before? You can see that a lot of them say no. If they already have some kind of knowledge from their academic, that means that they can't be a poor people. No. We see that the education is important. You can ask Steve Jobs, did you know how to plus and minus? Do you know your common knowledge? The Steve Jobs can't success if he don't have common knowledge about the mechanical or a thing that he wants to do when he's going to do in the future. We see that the narrative is true that if you don't get a basic knowledge or a basic academic, you're not going to successful in life. We see that even if that you don't get academic knowledge, we see that there's a really low percent of going to be successful in life. You didn't give us a better way or a better thought or better comments on what the education is not good. And we see that if your side is proposing that you don't need to get a common knowledge, no. You don't need to get anything, you can be successful even you haven't get any education. Moving on to my second clash point, which is they come up and say about the individual knowledge or individual interest, and we also come up with the common knowledge or how can we be successful with the academic knowledge. We see that the individual interest is important, right? But we still see that all these people that success in life because of their individual interests also need a common knowledge. No one can born and can walk immediately. Everyone needs to learn something. And we see that we need a one level of education. We need to know how to do that. You want to be a singer, but you don't know how to sing. How can you be successful for that? We see that the academy can provide this thing. If you want to be a singer, they can teach you how to sing. If you want to be a teacher, they teach you the knowledge that you can use in your life. We see that if you get a job, then you can be successful in life, as my first and second speaker already said. No. The successful in life is when you get a job. And when you get a job, this means you don't need to be like Steve Jobs. You don't need to be like Aristotle. You just be just success in life for us mean that you can get what you need. You can you can get what you need, and we see that that's enough for us to say it's a successful life. My mother stuck in poverty since my grandma's generation, and we see that she's tried so hard to get the basic education, which is how to speak English. We see that right now she's having her own business, own like 10 millions of money to send me into the school because she knows that it's important for people to have the basic knowledge on how to speak English, how to plus and minus, how to do work. We see, I'll take you in a minute. We see that even individual interest is important, but we see the common knowledge is also important. Yes.
Can I still contribute to society if I drop out of school and not get an education in the first place?
We see that the priorities in this society is that if you have ever been educated before, then you get a job. And who are we to change the priority of the society right now? A lot of businesses ask if you have education before, then they'll accept you to come to work. But at least it's a safe way for you to get a job, and at least have a safe way to live a life. If you don't think that, well, I'm not going to go to study and I just, well, think and take a chance, maybe there's someone accepting me, but we see that this is wrong. Because you say that if you won't going to get a job if you never going to educated before. That's what they come up and said, because we see that that's right. The majority of the person who have ever educated and success in life is maybe 99%, and the person that didn't educate and successful in life is maybe just 1%. Who are they? Like maybe a Steve Jobs because he quit college, but we can see the percentage is really low. A lot of scientists didn't be a scientist because he know nothing. At least he knows science. That's why we see that if they want to successful in life, at least we need a common knowledge or one level of academic. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, success in life contingent on one's level of academic achievement, or the motion have said it. I mean, education is needed. We are not determining the education the education is successful, and it's a part, and it helps you to success in the future. It can be anything, happiness, being an artist, or even travel around the world. But to obtain that successfulness that you define yourself, you need the basic things in life. You need to get a life. You need to have a job, right? You're not going to specialize in the thing you want. You're not going to play sport or travel around the world and do that all alone in your life. You're not going to have enough money. At the end of the day, you still need to get a life. And that is what education is going to propose. And the narrative is just taking you into the right way. The narrative of when you study, you are going to success. It's true, because the success can be built by the education. When you have education, you can do anything you want. You have the credit for the companies. You have money from job. You can do whatever you want to success your need in life. Education knowledge is a ticket for you to go and specialize what you want or desire in the future. For example, even my mom, she wants to specialize in English and take the scholarship and go to America to study. But before that, she needs to take the math test, the English test, the basic knowledge, the academic performance. She needs to do that. And when she passes that test, they are going to look at her resume and interview her to know whether she has the socialized skill or not. So when you want to pass the test and go to socialize and interview with that people, you need education. If you don't pass the education level, you are not going to go and get scholarship to America, and at the end of the day, you fail to fulfill your dream. And also the government are lying to the children. The narrative itself are not lying. The school are not lying. It's true. Education is needed. You need education to success. But government are lying to children that just only education, you can be success, but that successfulness is not sustainable. Job and education are making it sustain. Sure, you can say that you are success what you want. For example, you want to play sport. Yeah, I play sport all day. I'm successful in my dream. But is that sustain? You will stop there because you need to get a life and get a job and get the money. Doing what you want all day at the end of the day and going to create harm to the society. And government are going to propose and spreading that new stereotype or new thinking of them to the world. And when that happens, the children will think that, oh, I don't need school, so I can be success. I want to be a dancer, so I will dance all day. I'm so happy. But when you dance all day, what's going to happen? You are not going to get a job because you're not going to pass the first exam that they will give to you, and you're not getting to show them what you got. Education is very important. It's the key. So that you can pass the exam and get to show you are the one. You are what they want. You got something that they want. Education is very important and it's needed for everyone. So what the government has failed to realize that the education is the gateway to everything right now in the status quo. You want to go to America, yeah, you need to take education first, and after that you can take interview. And in school we also have the class that teach you how to socialize, teach you how to play sport, to dance, to sing, and that's already fulfilled all things. No harm were created now in status quo. There is no harm exists, but when the government are trying to solve the harm that doesn't exist, that is when they are going to create the harm themselves. And that's why we take this debate. Thank you.
From the get-go, we should have understood that this debate doesn't happen in the interview room in itself. This happens outside the interview room to the individuals who don't want to be going through the interview in itself. That's not their dream. They don't want to have to sit in a corporate office block or cubicle for the rest of their lives. They want to be pursuing their actual dreams, which is outside, say dancing, say playing football. We fight for these individuals, and that's the ideas that our government is propagating today. We feel that the ideas coming from them are completely harmful and detrimental as a whole to society's mindset, where they feel that only people who can nail down a certain job are the successful ones in life. I have quite a few questions that I need to pose to them, right? The first thing they have to understand is that we don't regret education as a whole. We feel it's fine. But the debate happens to these people who don't want this education, right? We regret the harms of extending this idea to the students. They seem to be okay with the harms that occur with them because they never really responded to these harms. So we feel that that necessarily still stands, and that all these harms are necessarily going to continue under their policy of not changing the system at all, right? Secondly, one of my speakers asked them whether, yes or no, can I contribute to society if I drop out of school? Look, I can go on, the list is endless of people who actually are high school dropouts and can contribute to society as a whole. We feel that these individuals are not useless as propagated by side opposition, but they still contribute to society, and whether they're happy with the way they contribute to society is what determines whether they're successful or not. If they're happy with their lives and they're happy with how they've contributed to society, then they are successful. That's what we feel really needs to happen, right? Also, we need to ask, who does it really benefit if you pressure these talented sports people into giving up their sports dreams to continue their education, which number one, they probably didn't have a real interest in it, or number two, they knew that they weren't very good in it. We understand that people can contribute to society, and contribution to society, whether you're happy or not with yourself, is what determines success. So their idea, number one, is going to harm the individual themselves into thinking that they can't contribute to society solely because they don't have an education, and also two, because segregating these people by telling them one part of society is good and the other part of society is bad, that is what is harming them, and that is what's preventing them from actually contributing to society, because they won't feel like they necessarily are. The main ideas we brought to you as side government was simple. We talked to you about how it harms the individual through this false propagation through the education system. We feel the education system is alright. We don't think there's a problem with it, but the idea that is propagated through this system we regret that idea. We concede with the ideas that yes, you can be successful with an education, fine. But what about the individuals who don't think they can cater to this specific education system? We answer the main underlying questions of the debate, where individuals don't always cater to a linear system, or they don't follow a linear system, but individuals are always open. That the system needs to recognize this and embrace the fact that people can contribute to society in lots of different ways, right? Secondly, my second speaker talked to you about how there's a big segregation between the rich and the poor. Now that still stands because it wasn't really responded to on how the poverty line is affected by this education system. We feel that if the education really worked and was working perfectly under their scenario, no one would be poor at all. So under those main ideas, we take the debate.
Please go ahead. And step up.
Yeah, we head outside.